afternoon, live from Toronto and the GBKM network. This is the Chat Up Show, the show where we chat about any and everything to do with popular culture. I'm your host, Elizabeth Aloyde, and I hope that you are ready to chat it up with me today. Now, as always, you can keep up with the GBKM network in various ways. You can listen live 24/7 in our web radio station. It's www.gbkm.fm. You can watch live on Facebook and YouTube. It's GBKM TV, where you can like, share, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Join in the conversation. And you can follow us on social media on Instagram. That's GBKMFM and Twitter at GBKM_FM. Now, you guys, what a few weeks it's been. Hasn't it been a little crazy, a little hectic? There's a lot that's been going on. The world feels like it's come to a standstill for the last 4 months. You know what? It's been a crazy first 6 months of 2020. This has been a year. But before we get into that, I just want to check in with all of you. I hope you're all doing well. How are you doing? Personally, I'm doing okay. The weather is nice outside, so it's reminding me that summer is here, which makes me feel very happy, but also reminded that we are still in the middle of a pandemic and COVID-19 is still very much real. But speaking of the first 6 months of 2020, we've had a lot. We've had what were considered threats of a quote-unquote World War III. We had the Australian wildfires. Then we lost a basketball legend, Kobe Bryant and his daughter Gigi Bryant, and the 7 others who lost their lives in that horrific helicopter crash. May they continue to rest in peace. And then, just as we were getting over that collective mourning process, we were hit by the pandemic. COVID-19 came and really shook things up for a while. And then now we're in the midst of halfway through our 3rd week of global protesting against anti-racism protests and protests to show solidarity for those who have lost their lives to police brutality. So there's a lot that has gone on this year. A lot. But that's okay. We are taking it all in stride. We are dealing with it. We are evolving. We are even seeing some change. Now, this week has brought about quite a few changes, not only in how we're going to move forward through this pandemic, but also in regards to George Floyd's murder case, the charges that have been brought against the 4 officers who were involved. We're also seeing some changes in some legislation across the United States. And we're seeing some shows of solidarity across the world, showing their solidarity against racism and against the history of racism in a lot of countries that we often seem to forget. We seem to forget our history. But this time has really helped us to remember what's gone on in the world, how we've come and ended up in this position and spot that we're in right now. I think that it's put a lot of things into perspective for us, not only the pandemic, but even the protests that are going on across the world right now. It's been a lot. It's been a lot. But first, I want to talk about one major change that happened this week for Ontario. It's that some regions are slowly entering phase 2. Now, as we know, a few months ago, our government announced that we will be going towards reopening different businesses and reopening the economy across the province in different phases, in 3 phases. Phase 1 is complete, and now some regions are moving on ahead into phase 2. Now, phase 1 was about protecting and supporting, with $17 billion targeted towards support and relief. And now phase 2 is all about restarting with a gradual, staged approach, and it sure is gradual. The majority of Ontario's public health regions will move forward into phase 2 on June 12th. However, Toronto will not be a part of that because we are not doing enough, apparently, to keep physical distancing and to stay safe. So Toronto, we need to do better so that we can move into the next phase of reopening along with the rest of our province. Now, Toronto is not the only region that isn't reopening. We also see that Windsor and Niagara are not included on the list of regions moving forward into phase 2. We will remain in phase 1 with weekly updates from the government on the ongoing assessment of these regions to determine if we will be able to then move into phase 2 soon. So I'm sorry, Toronto, especially since that is GBKM HQ, summer plans might have to slow down a little bit while we're still keeping up with our physical distancing. We're still remembering that we are in the middle of a pandemic. Though the weather looks great outside and we're still ready to get out and socialize again, we still have our restrictions, okay? So though across the province we are allowed to gather up to 10 people together socially, before it was 5, went up from 5 to 10, that is across the province. There are still some other businesses that will be opening in certain regions as well across Ontario. So we'll be seeing more outdoor dining services at restaurants, bars, and other establishments, including patios, curbside, parking lots, and adjacent properties will reopen. So maybe you'll start seeing some more food trucks as well. We will also see a select tattoo parlors, barbershops, for those who have been crying about getting a lineup, a shape up, get your hair cut, going to the hair salon, getting a new tattoo, getting a new piercing. Some of these parlors and establishments will be opening in certain regions of Ontario. So if you were really, really looking to get your roots dyed in these areas, you are in luck. You will be able to, as of June 12th. Again, Toronto, hang on in there. Sorry, this isn't for us. We're gonna have to sit this one out for a little bit. Also, we'll be seeing some day spas, beauty shops opening up, of course, still with some public health and safety measures in place. Though they are reopening, the restrictions will include no services like facials or anything to do with the face, really, makeup, face wax, threading, getting your eyebrows tinted, all of that. You're still going to need to wait a little bit more to get that done in your salons. Saunas, steam rooms, bathhouses also remain closed, just because keeping things clean between uses it might be a little bit difficult at this time. So those aren't really reopening. Those services aren't really reopening, but for the most part, getting your hair cut, doing that, getting your hair done, you will slowly be able to start doing that in certain areas across Ontario. Shopping malls are also set to reopen, following, of course, existing rules, meaning curbside pickup, online pickup, that kind of stuff. So maybe not really going into the mall to shop like you used to. Instead, you'll just be going in to pick up whatever you can if there's a curbside entrance. If not, chances are you're probably just gonna be visiting the mall to hang out on the outdoor patio of your favorite restaurant or bar. Also, tour guides and services will also be slowly opening up, such as bikes and walking, bus and boat tours, I guess for when we slowly start letting tourists come back in, slowly, that we're not sure that's happening just yet, but slowly, which is hopefully the projection for the future. These services will be up and running and able to accommodate for that. Also, allowing for tasting tours at wineries. So if you're trying to go get your wine on at a winery this summer, some of them will be opening across Ontario. Breweries and distilleries the same. Water recreational facilities such as outdoor splash pads, wading pools, and all swimming pools. Some of them will remain closed, obviously for health concerns, but some may reopen across the province. Beach access and additional camping in Ontario parks are slowly starting to open up. I think that we're seeing that summer is coming quicker than we expected. Honestly, I thought we were going to have a little bit more of the gloomy weather, but we're noticing that it's getting warmer quickly and people wanting to be outside more and doing their usual summer activities. But we still have to remember that there are some health regulations in place, and you also have to take care of your own personal health, regardless of what's going on as well. Just making sure that you're keeping yourself safe can almost guarantee that you're keeping everyone else around you safe. So that includes wearing your face mask or anything to cover your face and nose and mouth. Not your whole face, obviously, you gotta see, but face mask, washing your hands, physical distancing, at least 2 meters, at least 6 feet, at least. Hand sanitizer on deck, all of that. None of that's going away soon. So that's some stuff that we're gonna have to keep implementing and keeping up. It's part of the regimen now anyway. I mean, you can't leave your house without your mask, can't leave the house without hand sanitizer. We're used to it. I mean, we're like 3-4 months into this now. We're getting used to it. It's becoming our new normal. Also available are some drive-in and drive-through venues for theaters, for small concerts, and for animal attractions. Actually, in Toronto, a few weekends ago, the Toronto Zoo opened up their drive-through safari experience. So if you are in Toronto and you're like, I want to do something that's out of the house, but not really out of the house because you're still going to be in your car through the whole route, but that is an option as well, to go visit the zoo and visit the drive-through safari where you can drive through and see the different exhibits and see all the different animals. That's a fun experience. It's new. This is the new world we're living in. It's change. We are embracing the change. So these are some of the changes that we're seeing right now being implemented. Also, film and television production activities, obviously limited because of physical distancing. They will also be allowed to slowly start to resume, ensuring that everyone is keeping a safe distance from one another. Now, weddings. Wedding season is fast approaching, but weddings and funerals with a limit on social gatherings to 10 people in these areas of Ontario will be opening up as well and be allowed to happen. So we're looking for those who are looking to get married in the summer, you may still be allowed to, as long as you only have 7 other guests except the bridegroom and the minister, I guess. So 7 other guests there to witness you and your nuptials. That's fun, right? It's a fun, quaint, intimate wedding gathering of only 10 people. Now, places of worship, which is something that has been on the mind of a lot of people, wondering when they can go back to their places of worship. There is some guidance around that as the part of the province is slowly reopening, and that includes limiting attendance to 30% of building capacity, which means the maximum you're allowed in the building, now you can only have 30% of that, while also having the physical distancing available. So keeping chairs and people seated in the congregations and these places of worship as well, keeping the same physical distance that we've been keeping up with pretty much this whole year. So these are some little changes that we're seeing, hopeful about the future. Now, for those who have kids at home that you're getting ready to kick out because you just about had enough of them, some childcare centers will shift from only providing emergency childcare to enable a gradual reopening of regular childcare, of course with strict public health measures in place, including limiting operation capacity, meaning there might not be as many people in and hands-on with the kids in the facilities, in the buildings. But that is, of course, up to you if you're ready to take your child back to childcare. These are just some of the things that are reopening now as the province slowly enters phase 2 of the reopening plan, reopening the economy. Now, non-essential in-person gatherings. Now, this is the one a lot of people care about because they're trying to figure out if they can see their friends or not. Now, so non-essential in-person gatherings continue to be strongly discouraged. So what that means is the government is telling you, please don't, but if you have to, small outdoor events will be permitted with this new reopening plan. So events like cultural celebrations, animal shows, fundraisers, in line with gathering size restrictions. You know, we can only have 10 people now for social gatherings. So the rules for that is if you do plan to have a small gathering like that, the organizers will need to have measures in place to allow for proper physical distancing in the event space and while waiting to enter. So if you are planning an event in a space, you need to ensure that while within the space, people have enough room to practice proper physical distancing, and it's also in line with the regulations of how many people you can have in the space, and also while people are waiting to enter the space, like when we're lining up for the grocery store, probably still have to line up to get into these small gathering spaces. Just ensure everyone is staying safe and it's a safe environment inside the event space in general. So the event organizers are also encouraged to enforce one-way traffic, so only going through one way and going out another, and marked lineup area and timed entry and length of stay to allow for more rotation with the small gathering size. So you're on a timer, essentially, if you go out to some of these events that might start taking place once these gatherings are permitted. So yeah, so that's where we are right now. Of course, we won't be seeing the large outdoor events like concerts, large festivals. I shed a tear because I am an avid concert goer. I will say that, to tell you the truth. I miss going to concerts, I'm not gonna lie, but we're gonna have to hold on just a little bit longer as those are still yet not even in the picture. We're not even thinking about those just now. Right now it's on the smaller scale of things. We're going on the smaller side, trying to figure out how we can slowly ease back into society, keeping things as regular, as normal as possible. Sorry, I didn't want to use the word normal because what does that even mean anymore? But going back to regular scheduled business as much as we can post-pandemic. Now, Premier Doug Ford does say that entering stage 2 means that parts of the province will see more people back on the job and an opportunity to get back together with friends and family. And although this is extremely encouraging, he urges everyone to exercise caution and continue to follow public health advice as we are not out of the woods yet, okay? So though this is very hopeful, we're excited, we're like, yes, more things are opening up, we can do more things now, we don't have to be cooped up in the house 24/7. Our government's still telling us that we should slow our roll a little bit and remember that we're not completely cleared of this pandemic. We're still kind of in the middle of it. Not all areas of the province are in the same space, which is why not everywhere is reopening at the same rate. We're still waiting and seeing how things go, seeing how this phase 2 works out for certain places, maybe see how we can readjust in the future. But for now, just remember, COVID did not go anywhere. It's still very real. It's still very there. We are still seeing new cases. It's not that we're not seeing any new cases. We still are seeing new cases. In fact, Ontario reported 243 new COVID cases as of Monday and 24 more deaths. And that brings the province to a total of 30,860 cases, which is honestly only 0.8% increase from the previous day, which is the lowest growth rate since early March. Last time we reported these numbers, I had said that we'd seen about a 1% increase, which was low then, but now we're seeing 0.8%, which is lower. But it doesn't mean that we're 100% in the clear yet. The total now in Ontario includes 2,450 deaths and 24,492 cases that have been resolved. So that's about 240 more than the previous day. Ontario has also reported a drop in numbers of the people in hospital, going from 635 to 603. So we're seeing more people discharged from the hospital. And a trend over the past several days. It's been a trend over the past several days. And 1 week ago, it's reported that there were about 800 people in hospital with COVID-19. And at the end of the last month in May, it was around 900. So just to give you an idea of how much we're coming down, from a week, that's about 200 people out of hospital. So that's hopeful. We're hopeful. We're hoping to be more like New Zealand, have no new cases, but we're getting there slow and steady, just as long as we remember what we're doing and why we're doing it for. Now, the province also made a promise to increase testing over the few days, but it's been reported that it has completed 15,357 tests in the previous day, which is still short of its 20,000 tests a day goal. But still more testing's happening, which means we're finding out if more people may have COVID-19 or not. So that's a good place to be. The more we know, the better. You know, information is power. Now, this is generally good news, as I said, for the province, but also reiterating, we're still not in the clear. I think this can be said all over the globe, that even though we are seeing a lot more places reopen, we're starting to see more of a lax on previous restrictions, it's still important to remember that we still don't really have a full 100% grasp on the trend of the virus yet, 100%, to see if there might be a second wave, which is a concern for a lot of experts when it comes to a lot of places reopening right now. We're still concerned about maybe potentially seeing a second wave of the virus, leading us to go back into quarantine and lockdown. So that's something we don't want to do, which means that now, more than ever, it's important that we do listen and we do remember what we're doing and why we're doing it to ensure that our communities come out stronger on the other side of this pandemic. So wash your hands, physical distancing, you know, hugging people and seeing people that you've missed and all of that is so well and dandy, but we also have to remember this is for safety, public health and safety, okay? Now, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says that he will also be introducing a limited exemption to the cross-border ban on non-essential travel to allow for families to reunite. So families who have been separated due to the lockdown and the closing of borders across the world, now he is hoping to reopen it so that they can reunite. Now, this will apply to immediate family members of Canadian citizens or permanent residents. okay, seeking to come to Canada who are either spouses, children, and the parents of minor children, the Prime Minister said. But he also warned that anyone entering the country under the new exemption would be required to go into quarantine for 14 days after entry. So that is still in place. Though you may be allowed to come home to your family, you still need to self-isolate for 14 days upon entry. Also proving at the airport that you have a space to self-isolate, otherwise you will be provided, I guess, the quarantine quarters, if you will. Prime Minister Trudeau says that if you don't follow these rules, you could face serious penalties. So for families looking to reunite with their loved ones in Canada and they're coming from outside of Canada, if you're looking to reunite with your family and you're in Canada, these are the regulations that there might be a possibility for you guys to reunite, but you still have to go through the 14-day safe self-isolation just to stay safe. Okay, so those are some changes that's going on in our province, but I do want to talk about what's going on worldwide just to give it a little bit more perspective, because we're seeing a lot that's going on in the news. You know, it seems like everybody's out in the streets protesting, but we still know that there is a pandemic going on. And the WHO really wants to remind us of this. But first, I do want to say that this works. One country that has been able to come outside of their lockdown quarantine period and come back to returning to some semblance of normalcy is New Zealand. New Zealand has no active coronavirus cases, no new cases, officials said as of Monday. So that's something to hope for, that there is the bright light at the end of the tunnel, that we're not just keeping ourselves separated from everyone for nothing, that it can really work to help flatten the curve of the virus. And we're seeing that already across the province, that the curve is slowly flattening out. Slowly, surely. Keeping the hope alive, am I right? But yeah, New Zealand declared that life could return to a form of pre-pandemic normal as of Monday. Since the pandemic began, the country reported 1,504 cases. There was a point in time in Ontario that those were the number of cases we had in a day. So again, some perspective of how many new cases we have in a day compared to where we were before. But anyway, so New Zealand had reported 1,504 cases and 22 deaths nationally. And it's been widely praised for how they handled the pandemic from the beginning. They were one of the first to go on lockdown, very strict, and they were one of the first to start reopening. I know that I have been hearing about New Zealand slowly reopening and not having any new cases for the last at least month or so. So that's something to give you some hope about. Maybe you're starting to really go a little stir crazy being stuck at home with your whole family, or you're just being stuck at home with nothing else really to do. Just remember that just a little bit longer, just hang in there just a little bit longer. And if you ever need some tips to rejudge time in quarantine, figure out what you can do, parents with kids, we have been giving some tips and what you can be doing during quarantine all through this process on the Chat Up Show, or all through this period on the Chat Up Show. So you can go back, watch, get refreshed, get some new ideas of how you can revamp life in quarantine, life on lockdown, if you will. But it's not so bad. I mean, now we're able to, walk outside a little bit more. I'm seeing a lot more people going on walks, and, getting fit isn't so bad, right? Being out in the sun isn't so bad. It's nice. The weather's nice out here. Maybe you just need to go for those daily walks for a little bit longer and find a new route so you can spice things up so it's not the same route every single day. Those are ways you can change things up a little bit as we're slowly starting to go into hopefully phase 2 here in Toronto, but as the rest of the country slowly also phases into reopening completely. So it's just about getting creative. We got to be creative at this point. Now it's really about the creative juices flowing, figuring out how you can keep things alive, keep things fun and fresh while we're still kind of stuck inside. Now, despite New Zealand's amazing news, the WHO is still urging countries to remain steadfast in the fight against COVID-19. As of the 9th of June, which was yesterday, over 7.1 million